Hello, everyone. It's Alicia with Womanufacturing, and it is episode 2.
Hello, this is Justine. Welcome to the pod.
Doing, Justine? It's been a while.
I know it has been a minute. You are halfway across the world from me. Not exactly, but enough. 8 hours away. How are you doing there in the UK? It's pretty early for you recording.
Oh yeah, it's like 3:30 a.m., but it's time is just whatever at this point. I've been working like 9 days on, 12-hour shifts, and I'm going to have the next couple days off, but it's mostly just so I can switch to nights. And then I'll be back on for I think like 11 days of 12-hour shifts.
Oh
So,
my
I'm
God.
surviving. I bought new insoles when I went home last time, and it's a game changer.
Oh no. I almost feel like the improvements that you make for wardrobe to make you more comfortable at work ends up biting you in the ass because you end up spending just that much more time at work. It's like your body isn't actually giving out on you anymore, so you're not getting the feedback of like, I need to go home.
I know, seriously. But yeah, last time when I was working these crazy hours, I was getting like blisters, and there's nothing you can do. You can't just sit
Hmm.
down. You're on the manufacturing floor. Like, you got to make sure the lights are running, and yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, and the floor is always concrete and the lights are always fluorescent, and it always makes you want to just go touch grass and sit down.
And there's no windows. Like,
Never.
how many plants have you had that had windows? Like, I can't think of any. Sometimes I had an office, which is rare, but I did have an office occasionally that had a window. But when you're in this role, like in manufacturing, how often are you in your office?
I think they almost don't, especially for like 24/7 production, they don't want you to know. It's like being in a casino. They don't want you to see that time is passing. They just want you to exist and work.
But it's like being in a casino without the cool, wonderful air, the smoke, the like drinks and the excitement.
Yeah, the
I mean,
fun
there's
part and like
excitement.
the
It's
fun
different.
carpet patterns, the like lights and the action. Oh, there's lights, but usually it's like, oh, this robot's not moving, so it's like flashing red at me and beeping, which is not a pleasant sound.
Oh, the beeping. It literally, you go home and you're just like hearing virtual beeps in your head because you're hearing it all day.
Bro, it's so true, especially when you have a noisy line and you're like, oh, I know these different sounds. Actually, on where I'm working right now, there's a part of the production line, like different inputs and stuff need have different sounds and chimes. And one of the inputs sounds almost exactly like a backing up scissor lift, at least one that we have. So when somebody's bopping around on the scissor lift, you're like, what's wrong? What's wrong? You like check the equipment. You're like, I feel like Pavloved by this freaking equipment. It's like nuts. But at any rate,
Strategy around all the different like sounds and like all the different crazy light patterns. Do people actually react differently based on them? Because I feel like a lot of times it's just noise and people are pretending that it's going to help, but it doesn't help. What's your experience?
yeah, I mean, I definitely have sat in a meeting where we debate what the stack light colors should be and what they signify, and if we should standardize for every section. And then I like watch somebody just like play on their phone while this stack light's going wild. I'm like, yeah, I don't think that it's working the way you think it is.
Okay, and I know we're going off topic of what we were gonna talk about tonight, but I think that's gonna be the fun of our podcast. But like stack lights and horns are one of those topics. And I remember in the place we worked together, I made a big deal about it because they were trying to intermix stack lights for safety function as well
Mm-hmm.
as actual production. And I was like, no, I will die on this hill. Like you cannot intermix. And stack lights are often just not paid attention to, so it's just
Yep.
noise and craziness.
Yeah. It's like, I think when if the equipment is faulted and down, a red light is valid. But doing like a flashing red light of like, oh, you're in a warning state, that doesn't mean anything to anyone because they're like usually doing other things. I joked about the phone, but like usually like if they're refilling a thing to load into the equipment or they're cleaning something for the purpose of meeting like quality specs or like there's a lot of things that workers are doing which isn't sitting at the flash like looking at the flashing light, right? That makes no
Yeah.
sense. And I like
Yeah.
I it's kind of like the overview slide of something. It's like higher ups like it because you can glance at the floor and see what's happening, but for the
Yeah.
function of the floor, like it's not a safety mechanism.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
totally agree. And so, yeah, I think we went with the lights for safety, but I mean, it kind of worked in that scenario. And I don't know
Mhm.
that given our batch processes and kind of how those things worked, I don't think the lights would have done much because it wasn't like a traditional, manufacturing process with a lot of dependencies with like starved and blocked and all of that.
Yeah, like
But
continuous or whatever.
yeah, so and I really what is effective to me is like red is red, that means the line's down. And then you've
Mhm.
got like green, which is like I'm running, and then green flashing is like I'm idle. I'm
I'm
waiting. I'm
I'm
waiting till my
waiting for
downstream.
something.
Yep.
Yeah.
Waiting for my
We
downstream to clear up.
we do have a good indication where if it's like if there's another color, like a blue one, while it's green, it's like, oh, this is in like a bypass mode or something. So if people are like, why is it just feeding stuff and it's not like running correctly? It's like, oh, I have it in a weird, like almost like an engineering mode. And you're like, that's a good visual
Mhm.
indication because
That's helpful.
that's a
Yeah.
quick glance at like, yeah, something's not right here. Um,
Yep. All right,
but
I'll get us back on topic.
I think we're on a topic that we find interesting, but other people are gonna find dull. But that's okay. This is for
And
us,
they might
really.
like it. But anyway, yeah, so I was going to talk a little bit about how I got into controls coming from chemical engineering because you, Justine, told me that you really don't know that story.
Yeah, I was always I mean, I always accepted you. I've only known you as a controls person, and then when I found out that we were, chemi sisters, I was like, "Oh, this is why I adore this woman." No, just kidding. But I was like, "Oh, that seems not like an odd pairing because I think chemical engineering we can't all just make isopropyl alcohol at the end of the day, right? It teaches you how to think. But yeah, how did
Yes.
you end up in the world of controls and machine manipulation?
So I have two. I'm really all over the place because I'm quite knackered and I'm trying to like pick up the terminology here in the UK. But two things. One is I did not travel with my microphone, so I apologize to the audience for the audio not being as good as it was last time. Not that it was amazing, but better. Yeah. And now I forgot what that other thing was. But anyway, doesn't matter. All right. So, yeah, basically right out of school, you just kind of like go get a job that's available. And
Mhm.
so I went into a production supervisor job, which is really wild when you're 22 years old and you have like 30 employees that are reporting to you and you don't know anything. You literally don't know what a valve looks like in real life because you learned about it in thermodynamics and different classes, but like you didn't truly understand what that meant in real life.
Mhm.
So that was like challenging but fun. I learned a lot real fast, and that was kind of like my first taste because it was a cheese plant that was brand new. It was a greenfield cheese plant. So I'm sitting here trying to write SOPs when I know nothing and having like direct reports, all that. So literally quickly got into another role where I became an engineer. I think I was hired as like a liaison between manufacturing and engineering. And then the engineers are like, she knows what she's doing. All right, let's or I knows what I'm doing. Yeah, sure. But like had potential. And
Mhm.
so they pulled me in. This was Daisy Brand. And it was these two sweet baby angels that just like taught me everything Tom and Tom, and I think they're still at Daisy Brand. I stay in
Aw.
touch with them occasionally. Yeah.
Well,
And
save your
it,
Toms, just like helping you out.
I know it was so great. I love those men. And basically, we wore all the hats. We were the process engineers. We were the controls engineers. So we were like designing the control panels. We were designing it was dairy. Basically they taught me controls, taught me like design. So I was designing or specking heat exchangers and valves and even doing like hand isometric drawings for like the sanitary piping. I was basically control panel design, programming everything with a lot of guidance, but they literally just like let me run free. They gave me the concepts and then they said, go program this. So I programmed all of the cottage cheese process. It was a brand new product because they were only doing sour cream. And I'm like, yeah, 22. I was there for like 3.5 years. And I had the owner of the company standing next to me while we were running our first batch of cottage cheese with all of my coding. And I'm like, I hope this works. Like, and I mean, but it did. And I just cannot believe that they put that much faith in me as somebody so new and so young. And it worked out well. So I think this was really what I learned is good leadership is like, let somebody go out, empower them, have guardrails, be there to catch them, but also kind of see what they got. Throw them to the wolves, but with like good netting to make sure like when I fall that they're there. And so it just allowed me to take that holistic ownership of everything. So as a controls engineer from then on out, I was like, I am not going to stay in my lane and just do controls and have somebody dictate to me what's going on. I need to understand the process. And I think that's what makes a really good controls engineer. And it's really, really important. So you can't just assume that Justine's going to give me this functional spec or control narrative and that's it. I don't care about what's happening with the process. I have to know all that to be a really good controls engineer. So fell in love with controls, then ended up doing a lot of like project engineering where I was hired as like the only engineer for a company, but the fact that I had controls knowledge was always like a big plus because usually it was like maintenance trying to maintain equipment with the controls, but then they had me and I could come in and kind of like help them. And then at a certain point when I went to Chobani, I'm like, controls all the way. I love controls, plant design, all of that. And consequently at Chobani, that was when a VP of engineering was like, you need to go be a leader. You need to become the manager because our manager got let go. And I was like, no, I don't want to be a manager. I want to be a kick-ass controls engineer. That's what I love. But I mean, he pushed me and I'm so glad I did it. I fell in love with it. And Dan, who we worked with together, he worked for me at Chobani as well. And it was funny because we were like competitive. It was like somebody would come in with a problem and we would race to see who could solve it faster. And we would always tease each other and be like, oh, they came to me. I'm the better controls engineer. We were super competitive. And they were always super worried about like when I got promoted to manager, they asked Dan, they're like, are you okay with Alicia being a manager and like you working for her? And he's like, yeah, I don't want to go to the meetings. I don't want to be a manager. Like she likes that stuff and yeah, she'll be good. It's all good. So, I mean,
he's like, I'll always get to the problems first now. Ha ha
ha. I win. I'm the winner. So
I'm the favorite controls engineer. And you're like, damn it.
Exactly. So yeah, controls has just been my passion. And the thing is, in the US, there are not degrees for it other than mechatronics and like robotics. And so we all have to just learn it in the field and hope that somebody will take us under their wing. And luckily, the Toms did that for me. And I think it's just made me so passionate. And I just love it so much. And now being a leader, I get to pass on this knowledge to a lot of other people. I've taken people that were maintenance techs and, trained them to become PLC techs and then specifically controls engineers and things like that. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's been my journey, and everything's always just been in manufacturing, and I never want to be put in a box. I never want to just be controls. I want to be thinking about where I'm going to install this and how maintenance is going to be able to access it, or what do I need to build in my HMI so that, ops and maintenance can have an easier go at it, and,
Yeah.
be out on their floor and listen to those guys because they know what the heck's going on.
No, I
So,
love
you
that. I
know,
love to hear
I
that too with
yeah.
having good advocates along the way. I think everyone that's been a really kick-ass worker around me has these success stories of having someone not necessarily taken under the wing or shown exactly what to do, but given like a good safe ground, like a soft ground to learn how to ride the bike, right? Like you're better at riding the
Mhm.
bike if you learn in a grassy field because you're not afraid to fall than if they just throw you out on pavement and they're like, it's already established, just don't ruin it. And you're like, well, that's not a
Yeah,
growth opportunity at all. So that
exactly.
warms my heart. I'm like, really, I'm so happy that was the case for you.
Yeah, I feel extremely fortunate. And so now one of my passions is to be able to mentor and grow and teach people that have a desire to get into control. So I put a lot of effort into that. I
Hmm.
even want to go as far as, go into schools if I had the time and the opportunity. I want to teach anyone and everybody that wants to know controls. And I'm actually hiring an intern who will start right when I get back from the UK. He's a mechanical engineer, and I want him to see the world of controls. And I'm going to take him under my wing and teach him everything I know this summer. And he's going to add value to my company, Lomas Manufacturing Automation. And I really look forward to seeing if he wants to stay doing, mechanical engineering design, or if he falls in love with controls. And I'm secretly hoping he falls in love with controls.
No, that's such a good route because that was very similar to my trajectory of getting internships to see what it's like in industry, what it's actually what's my ultimate job availability when done. Because you're right, we spend so much time in school learning fundamentals and principles and how you structure your mind to solve problems, which I think some people have kind of a natural inclination for, which is why they would go into engineering. Um, but just kind of honing those skills, right? And then you get all geared up and then you get to senior year and you're like, I don't even know, I couldn't even tell you what a job opportunity is for me. Like I don't
Mm-hmm.
know what this degree actually gets me. I was told, oh, you'll have jobs all the time, this, that, and the other, but then I don't actually have a face to like where I'm going. All I've ever met is
Yeah.
professors with the same degree as me, and I'm like not going to be a professor.
Yeah.
So what are we doing here? Um, so I think that's great. I think that's fantastic. We love an internship, ideally paid, but even if it's not, you learn an experience. Um, I advocate to people all the time who, if I have someone ask me, "Hey, so how'd you get into this or that?" and it's like, honestly, school is important because you need to check the box, and ultimately, it's what you know how to do, which is not it's not your e-fundies, it's not your thermodynamics, it's not your chemical reactions. It's uh, boots on the ground, troubleshooting and understanding, or like wet lab work or project management jobs that you can point to
Mm-hmm.
and say, I honed the skill and I understand now what I would do different to make it better. Which you
Yeah.
can't do unless you just are actually taking action. So it's so important.
Yeah, I have to admit that in my early days, I was pretty adamant that you needed to have a degree to become a controls engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And that shifted over time. When I was at Chobani, I had people that had a 2-year degree or no degree at all and just
Mm-hmm.
kind of worked their way up through maintenance. And some of the people that just had that just extensive experience were really, really good controls engineers. And I changed my tune completely. I
I like
still
that.
think a degree helps because you do learn, how to be resourceful. You learn how to be a little bit more professional about things, organized. There's some of these foundations that you learn in college, but it's not necessary. You can also learn that stuff in the field.
Yep. Yeah. I've always, not to shit on PhDs too much, but I've always liked
Let's shit on them.
I like my boots on the grounds people like way more than my, well, technically, right? Like I just need to know how to get it to work. I don't necessarily need the fundamentals of the theory. I need the theory, and then but when we're in the real world, like I need functionality. And I don't need a degree. I need experience. And experience comes in a lot of ways. So,
Pretty
yeah.
sure you coined the term carpet dweller, and I have stole that shamelessly, and I really love
Oh
it.
my god. Okay, this is kind of mean, but in the world of production, I have yet to see a production floor that isn't just concrete. Like we talked about this earlier, right? Smooth, cleanable, or don't care about getting scratched concrete. You got your steel toes on, and then you have little cushy mats when you have to stand in a spot for a long time, like the checker at like a grocery store or whatever. And that's it, right? And then you have your people who they're 9 to 5ers and they can always get hot coffee and they can always have access to a refrigerator with enough space. And it's the people who they keep the company moving in the background, but they're not making the product. And these are the carpet dwellers who have a lot of resource and a lot of voice and not a lot of direct understanding of what's happening to be the things that are happening to make their company a company, right? Like we're making a product and you're not making the product. You're doing the background. And it's always been curious because it's like way different perspectives. Like there's just a difference between being on the floor and not really being on the floor at all.
Can I just say, one of my favorite stories is when I was working on designing a precursor cathode plant at one point. There was a carpet dweller who decided it would be a good idea to have an 8-foot pH probe on a tank that didn't have a manway walk area. And that is like to me the epitome of the carpet dweller that has no concept of what people actually have to do out on the floor, and how pH probes you have to like calibrate every 8 hours or whatever it may be.
Right.
Like, oh my gosh.
It's like, how are we going to access this thing? Or I had an interesting thing semi recently where they were asking us for like, I think it was insurance purposes or something. Like, can you estimate on an hours per day how often you're on the production floor? And I'm like, my desk is on the production floor. I am not filling this chart out. I was like aghast. I was like, I'm not tracking my hours of being on the production floor. I think it's because it's like, if a human being is closer to a forklift, like they're more likely to get hit by it. So it has like insurance impacts or something. This is just my assumption. But I was like, this is one of the most time waster requests because somebody needs an answer, but they're unwilling to do thoughtful work to get it. And I get that they just need the answer and it needs to be accurate, but I still think that there was a couple other options that could have been attempted before being like, oh, just track your hours. I'm like, oh, I'll just add that to the end of my day. Every day, I'll just do that and be super accurate. I was like, I'm not doing that. I refuse.
Yeah, exactly.
I protested. I was like, this seems like not a good use of my time.
Yeah, I've always loved that about you. You've always been extremely direct, and it's not in a entitled or non-understanding of the world way. It's like you have your boundaries. You really are wise beyond your years. We talk about this a lot, and you're not afraid to say what happens and let the chips fall where they may. And I think that's really admirable.
Well, thank you for saying that because I don't mean it maliciously.
Of course not.
I mean it from like an advocate for folks who don't always get a voice at the table. It's like I just want other folks in they're given, like, you have your head down and you have to get your work done, and your bubble doesn't always take into consideration the impact on other people's bubbles. I think you kind of expressed a story about this that would be cool to share, which is like when you're in a stressful situation and then sometimes you have upper ups who are like asking for updates, and they're applying pressure, and they think that it's a motivator, but it almost adds just duress. And there's an interesting line between like what somebody thinks that they're getting done and what their actual impact is.
Yeah. Yeah, we are going to talk a little bit about shift work, but we're obviously kind of catching up and trying to share with the audience, some of our background, how we've worked together, some more about us since this is, new. But one of the things about working 24/7 or in a manufacturing environment is there's always this like thing, and maybe it's an escalation plan, or like if something takes more than 2 hours to solve, you better be texting the plant manager or a director or VP or whatever. And I don't like it, especially if they can't add value. Like what is
Hmm.
that really doing? Like this
What
is
is explaining
frustrating.
my thought process? Like, unless I need someone with different authority than I do to make a call,
Yeah.
right? Like, we've been hammering at trying to get this thing in, and it's brought production down, and it's threatening what we're able to hand off to the next shift. We're gonna stop trying to install. We're gonna finish. We're gonna button everything back up, and we're gonna get running like normal. Like, that's a judgment call that I would need.
Yeah.
Maybe, depending. I feel like it depends on the situation, obviously. Like, a lot of times I feel I have the authority to decide if we're going to keep hammering at something, if we're going to call it for tonight and then come back to it so that things are safe for people when we leave. Um, but yeah, like if I don't need like an authority figure weigh in, I don't need the authority figure weight to a problem solving situation.
And so all you're doing is you're taking out 5 to 10 minutes away from your problem solving, and you're moving forward on a, you know, problem to update someone who isn't necessarily like doing anything with that
Yep.
information. So yeah,
Yep.
if it's to like say, hey, okay, we've reached a hard limit. I need this resource. Hey, can you make a decision to bypass this safety, which do that with caution, obviously. But
Mhm.
unless they're adding value, what's even the point? So but with all that being said, Justine, I kind of want to hear from you, like what brought you into wanting to have a desk on the manufacturing floor, and where your passions lie, which I've seen firsthand. Yeah, I want to hear a little bit more about what brought you to where you are now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so I ended up picking chemical engineering because in high school I had an internship in a lab at Oregon State. In Skip Rochefer's lab, and he's, in his words, a polymers guy. So he has a degree in chemical
Mm-hmm.
engineering, and he does work with plastics. And in the process of being in his lab, I saw how many interesting and dynamic problems can be solved with this degree. Like, for instance, he had a project that was um, sometimes trash, or a lot of times trash will wash up on ocean beaches, and even just like styrofoam and stuff like that doesn't have a recyclable source, and once it's contaminated with salts and stuff, you can't really do anything. But he had this
Oof.
concept of taking all these plastics and pressing them together to make like an insulation, which would be a cheap building tool for coastal communities who don't always have a lot of money. And so you take this waste stream and you turn it into a value add thing. And I think that's just such a clever way of seeing the world and being like, well, I can't eliminate it, but can I incorporate it? And so I was inspired to go into chemical engineering. And so I both love and hate this man. Because after I started my degree in chemie, I realized that they honestly make school hard just for the purpose of weeding out the weak. It's just like an unnecessary roughness. I don't know if that was your experience, but my education, I'm also just a real try hard, and I cared about my grades, even though like nobody asked about my GPA anymore or anything like that. But like I cared then, right? And so I threw myself at this work, and through the process of having worked in the lab, I got more internships where I ended up working in labs, and I liked being hands-on, but I didn't like being in the lab, you know? Like pipetting things wasn't really getting me going. And so I ended up getting at Oregon State, there's a cool program called MECOP, which is Multiple Engineering Cooperative. And it's an opportunity for undergraduates to have 2 6-month-long internships in industry, 2 different industries, each for half a year. Which is fantastic. It usually adds a year-to-year degree depending on how much of a tryhard you were ahead of time, but it's kind of worth it because it's paid. And I found it invaluable because I got to experience industry. And it was when I was there that I realized that I really liked the people who were the boots on the ground labor. I liked interacting with the product. I liked the candor that I had with the people getting things done. And I liked being busy in it. And so one of the places I was working at was like this plant that had been doing the same product for like 60 years. And so all the projects were multiple years long, and they were very small improvements. And a lot of people, they weren't phoning it in, but it's kind of like things were so stable and cushy that you didn't have to be busy. And
status quo.
Exactly. It's like we're just trying to be stable. And once you're on stable ground, it's way easier to stay stable. And I was bored.
Sounds familiar.
And I was actually taken under somebody's wing who's an engineer who had been there a long time. But he had me do work on effectively a new product introduction, or NPI. And that's when my hours got longer. The problem solving was more dynamic. The materials were actually more dangerous. I got to wear funky PPE. I felt kind of like a badass for doing these things, especially being like young and giving me the opportunity to take control of some of these things that were a big deal and could move the company in a different direction. And so that's when I was kind of inspired to continue on in a more dynamic space. So I fell in love with production. I moved away from lab work, which helped shape. You're like, okay, you're in this space like junior, senior year. You're like, okay, am I going to go to higher education, which usually means a master's, which you pay for, unless you get in a program, or a PhD, which you don't pay for, but you do pay for in your life. Like they take 5 to 7 years of your life away, and they pay you enough to survive, but they don't pay you enough to thrive. And so, and I was looking at the outcomes of having a PhD, and you're like, bro, I don't want to be in a lab, but like, I don't want to do that work, and I don't want to be at a university. I want to get out. So, I had another internship opportunity because I'm just forever intern. And that's when I got to do the startup work, and it was crazy paced. It was super dynamic. There was never a dull day, and it was just really invigorating. I mean, exhausting. And especially when you care, it takes a lot, and sometimes it can take more than it gives. But I found the space that I like. I like this dynamic new product introduction. I like getting to see like, what's my bottleneck? What's the highest priority thing to get done today to make us better tomorrow? And once you knock that out, you can see, okay, what's my next thing that's in my way? It's just super
Mhm.
invigorating. So I've just been in production ever since, which is like it's great and it's challenging. But I wouldn't do if it wasn't engaging for me. So yeah.
And not just any production, startup production, right? Which is
Startup production,
very
which is like
different.
yeah, because like when you're in a stable stomping ground or a well-established company, they usually can afford time to build you as an engineer. They take their green engineers, their newbies, and they build them up and they build the worker that they want to have. And what you and I have both experienced is the trial by fire, which is
Yep.
I have too many things to get done. You're going to wear some of my hats. I'm going to tell you if you're wearing it wrong. Um, go.
No, it's so true. And, obviously we were at a startup together. And I mean, I just have to say again, very impressed by you because you were part of the core team. We had such a small team in the beginning,
Mhm, mhm.
you were there before me, but it's like we're at least the first 50. And, every project we were on, we were in one big huddle, the COO, every engineer at the company are all huddled together, like solving these problems. And I mean, that was really unique and very cool. And we're all pushed out of our comfort zone. And so,
Mhm.
I mean, and that was, I worked at a medical device startup, but they had been a startup for like over 10 years. And I would say Chobani was kind of a startup too. I worked for a lot of private companies, but then you get into the startup world where it's like you are literally doing this stuff for the first time ever that nobody's ever seen and done before.
Mhm.
And wow, it's wild and invigorating. And I mean, yeah, it's rewarding and you get almost addicted to it, even though it
Yeah.
has some consequences of like you have no life. You're working so many hours and you're doing shift work because you just put in a new piece of equipment that, has some, safety concerns. It has new stuff that you haven't seen before. There's so much variability. You're inherently working with dangerous chemicals and fire hazards and all of that kind of stuff. And so that kind of leads me back to obviously I'm working shift work right now, but like we had to do shift work, like, and you think, oh, I'm an engineer, I'm going to work 9 to 5. I mean, that's just not reality. And
Well, not for all types of engineers. There's a lot
yeah.
of different flavors of us, and all of them are important because if I had to sit down and CAD something, it would A, take forever, and B, not turn out well. Um, but I am also willing to shift my life, my life schedule so that I can overlap with my people.
Yeah.
Honestly, the experience of 24/7 production, I think almost deserves its own episode. Um, what are you thinking?
I do agree. Absolutely. So I guess maybe we could just touch on a few things when it comes to 24/7 manufacturing that relates to kind of just us personally, which
Sure.
is maybe what's good about it and what's bad about it. I mean, let's maybe finish with a few, comments about that. What did you like about it? Because I know, when we were working together, you and your team were the experts on the process and it was new processes. So you had to basically babysit it 24/7 and then make the decision whether you called controls, which was my department, or you guys handled it. Or, I mean, and how often did you even have to get upper management involved? You kind of had it handled. So yeah, I want to hear your goods and your bads at you know, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, context to this is at the startup we were at, we had two pieces of equipment that were operating 24/7 when we were really, really small, right? And the two engineers who were responsible for this equipment were my boss and me. And my boss had this idea. Is like, well, two pieces of equipment, two engineers, why don't we each own one of them? Because they were doing same but in different ways, so they had their own personalities to learn. And so as we were adding a couple more engineers to our quote unquote team, before those engineers could be expected to respond to any issues, each of us effectively became on call 24/7, without an end in sight. And I'm stating this in a almost like PTSD kind of way, because I will tell you, as like, I think I was 22 at the time. Being a 22-year-old, who's especially was like, I'm pretty fresh from college. I was a partier. You binge and purge, like you study hard, you do all the things, and then you like party and delete all of your memory of doing something. And like having to be on all the time was very stressful, because like you could get a call at 3 a.m. on a Saturday and someone be like, something's funky with the equipment. I'm worried about continuing processing. Do I continue going, or what do I do? Right. And you're navigating this over the phone with somebody who like you can't necessarily see the equipment. So you're asking them, what does it sound like? Like, how did this start? What did you load to it ahead of time? Da 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 da. And so you snap immediately, typically out of sleep or stupor, and into like response. So I would say that was a negative for me. It was deeply challenging. And it gave me a lot of respect to other people managing like a 24/7 operation. It's like, you might leave, but there's somebody or a lot of bodies still at work, still keeping things going while you're not there. And it just like, it builds a bit of respect for others. I think a challenging aspect of 24/7 ops is trainings, right? Because you have to be there. You have to wait for your person to come in to train them, which means you have a lot of like late evenings, or what you would call a swing shift, which is usually you start at like noon and then you stay until like 8 or 9 or 10 p.m. And that's like a swing shift. Or you just do crazy things like you decide on a Friday to change something and you come in at a normal time and then you leave at an ungodly hour when you feel like it's safe to pass off something.
We were in those trenches.
Oh my gosh, yes.
On a Friday night until 1, 2, 3 a.m.
So, I mean, on a positive note though, is like, I'm once again working at a plant that is 24/7, and our shifts change at like 5 p.m. And so I actually shifted my schedule to the quote unquote swing shift, so that I actually avoid all like normal hours of traffic. Like, I don't hit the roads at rush hour. So it makes my commute better, because I go into work between 10 and 11 a.m. And then I leave between like 7 and 10 p.m. depending on the day. But it gives me a few hours of overlap with my evening crews to talk about what's new, or do trainings on my production areas, or listen to their gripes, because it's really hard when you're holding down the fort at night and you don't have engineering coverage physically present with you. Sometimes it's nice. Like I've talked to a lot of weekend and night shift crews, and I think we've touched on this before too, where it's just like so relieving to not have any busybodies or the people running through, or like, oh, could you get me this data, or could you pull this thing, or can I do a tour through here and do this, that, and the other? It's like you cut all the crap and you're just boots on the ground production at that point. And that's actually that's when you get a lot of work done. So that's also a positive. of 24/7. You're like, I'm going to quietly implement a bunch of stuff that I want to do when I have less people like, oh, can you come to this meeting? I need your opinion. And you're like, I don't want to be in your meeting to say 17 words, which are mostly don't do this, is going to impact the floor.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's my like brief takeaway.
Yeah, absolutely. And, what I liked is, when we would roll out a new process or a new piece of equipment or a new production line, having, your team, the chemical engineers who understand the recipes, how this stuff is supposed to work, was kind of fantastic, because then you guys knew, you went as far as you could, and you knew if it was a controls issue, you knew if it was a mechanical issue, so you have the smarts to be able to call the right people. Whereas if you just have an on-call process for an operations crew, that they're gonna make a decision. It's a Windows PC that's not booting on, and they're
Oh,
gonna
they're
put
calling
controls because
everybody. They're
they
calling
don't know
freaking
any better.
anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I
They're
would
like,
say,
I just
like,
need help now.
I'm sure I'm biased, but I feel like controls was always like getting the most calls in my
Oh,
time
yeah.
over my
Oh,
career.
yeah.
Like, not even just at the one place, but really everywhere. And my family used to just get so frustrated with me because I'm home for Christmas and I'm getting calls. And, luckily, wherever I worked, I would set up a way for me to be able to remote in. But it's like, okay, sorry, family, I'm going to leave this Thanksgiving dinner and I'm going to go log into the plant and toggle some bits and like
Yep.
help production. But, because it's like, I was at the yogurt place, I'm like, making yogurt, saving lives, because they do act like it's the end of the world. Like, it's downtime, and what if the milk goes bad because we can't process,
Oh, it's a
it's
lot of
just
money
that
loss if your continuous
it's
process is
crazy.
FUBARed. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've been on call literally my entire career since I
Yeah.
was 22 years old.
Yep.
And, it's always that battle of like, put down boundaries and try to give them some sort of escalation plan, which I have a lot now, with it says like, did you check this? Did you check this? And then you can hire like controls techs that can be like your first line of defense, and, have 24/7, which really helps, because then once they're calling you, they've checked this, that, and the other. And,
Oh,
when
yeah.
otherwise you have maintenance people calling and they're like, this isn't working. And you're like, do you even have the electricals out? And they're like, no. And you're like, can you call me back when you have the electricals out? And you like check something. So,
Well, yeah.
anyway.
And like, I think that's totally right in the sense that when you're first doing the new product, like you have no idea how it's going to work yet, right? Which is when you
Yeah.
end up manning the equipment yourself and figuring it out yourself.
Yeah.
And then as you realize, you're like, okay, I have consistent faults here with like this robotics, or the equipment when it overheats like this is what it's going to sound like, or this is where I can look to check. Or if it's like,
Yeah.
if I've lost comms, right, I can be like, look, this is where the Ethernet cable goes in. If you don't see blinky lights, like you don't have
Blinky
comms.
blinkies.
Like you need to look for the blinky blinkies.
Yep. That is literally my favorite term. And today on shift, I said that to one of the technicians. I was like, I love the technical term blinky blinkies. And he's like, oh
Yes,
yeah, that's
it's
like the only
important.
term.
They are so cheerful and reassuring, because you're like, okay, if I have my comms, it means that it's accurate. And if I don't have blinky blinkies, I have a really simple solution.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
I love
But
yeah. But I
but
mean,
yeah, go ahead.
no, you're good. You're good.
I was just gonna say, like, as I've been working shift work now on my current assignment, because I own my own business, I'm doing quite a bit of, different types of work. So I'm on shift because I'm doing what I need to do to help this client.
Mhm.
And you're on shift, and honestly, the weekends and the night shift are just glorious, because I don't have all the looky-loos. I don't have all the
Mhm.
people that are, kind of distracting and getting in the way. And I could just do whatever I need to do. But with that being said, the resources, right? Like it's hard to be on shift when you don't have the resources.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so that's probably one of my pretty big complaints is like, I know what's wrong, but I don't have admin rights or I don't have the ability to log into the IT server. So now I've got to try to get a hold of an IT person, but they may or may not answer. And then I'm sitting here like stressed out, like I just want to solve problems because that's who I am, but I don't have the resources to do it.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, shift work is what it is, and you kind of figure it out. You sleep when you need to sleep, and you don't. And when you're excited about what you're doing, like I personally don't require as much sleep because I get all passionate. But yeah, I would say like at the place we worked, me and the maintenance manager would go in at least once every 2 weeks to go troubleshoot a safety circuit. So, you know, I would get up in the middle of the night, drive in and go make that happen. And that's just the way it is. But I also love manufacturing, like glutton for punishment. I don't know. I just love it.
I mean, it's one of those, it's so rewarding. And it's not truly like a hero complex. You're not like, I'm the one who saved it. But it's just like I recognize my value when I get to contribute to production. And that's just like intrinsically really rewarding. So
I wouldn't call my thing a hero complex, but I actually do sometimes feel like a hero. And sometimes when I'm walking in at 2 a.m. to come solve a problem, I've got like this rock star song in my head, like, oh yeah, I'm coming in. I'm going to fix this. We're going to get ready.
We're going to get this going again. And like, I'm going to be the one to do it. And yeah, that's a real freaking thing. It's like, I feel like a badass when I can enter a space and be like, I know what's up and I can help you. Like, that's amazing.
And even if you don't know what's up, you're now going to see a problem that you've never seen before, and you're going to systematically work through it because you and I have that brain that can be thinking 10 steps ahead and how everything's interconnected. And now, next time, we're going to know exactly what it is. But again, then that turns into everybody leans on us. And I think you had mentioned to me recently, like, once you're the reliable one, or once people know you know your shit, even if you have an on-call schedule, that they'll get your number and then they'll call you even if you're not on call. And it's like, I'm married to my job. I have chosen to not have kids, and I have chosen to kind of marry work. I'm putting in more and more boundaries as I get a little bit older and realizing that I need to do that for my own mental health. But like, the people will, you know, keep leaning on you. So you do have to like have a really healthy set of boundaries while still being able to, you know, deliver for your company and do what's right. And I think you and I both have this sense of ownership. So if I'm not doing anything and I have a call, I'm probably going to answer it, and I'm probably going to try to help them. Even if I'm busy, I'm going to be like, oh, well, let me get a hold of somebody and they can help you. Or here's the actual process. Let me know if they can't help you, because we just have this sense of ownership. But we do have to do better about our own boundaries and making sure we don't cause ourselves mental health issues.
Yeah, that's definitely something to keep in mind, because there is this reward of being helpful and keeping the team going. And then there's also there's always a give, and then there's always a take, right? And if it's a lot of taking, you run out of your give, or you can resent your space, which is really challenging. And I mean, I don't know. I think my learning more recently for myself is, and I feel like I always did this, but maybe you can check me on it. But when I am the go-to person, I like to empower other people to be able to be you know, capable, right? I don't want to be the bottleneck. I don't want to be I have to call this person at 3 because she never showed me the blinky blinkies, right? Like, I want people to know. I was like, it's not magic. It's like pretty simple. Anyone can do it. Like, or somebody showed me it and now I feel competent in doing it and I don't have to bother them for it later. So some people
Yeah.
are like, oh, I need to protect my job. And I was like, no, I don't
Ugh.
want this job just to myself. I think you can do it. I bet you can do it.
No.
Let me show you how you can do it later. So
Exactly. And that whole antiquated idea of, job security, and I'm gonna like keep this and not tell anybody is ridiculous. So
it
although
doesn't
I
let us
do
move
love
forward. It's just like
no.
an inconsiderate way of existing. It's like, what are you going to do? What if you get hit by a bus and like you've just
Yep.
screwed over this whole production line or a portion of it because you're
Yep.
worried about being replaced? Like, be a hard
Yeah.
worker and you will never want for something to do, right?
Exactly. And that's where I believe in like wikis and postmortems and
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
I'm an over communicator
Me too.
and troubleshooting guides. Yeah, I mean all those things. So we need to be sharing the knowledge, and that means less calls for you because now you've empowered a bunch of other people to know what you know and pass that information along. I think it's super, super important.
I couldn't agree more. And
How often are you doing crazy shift work other than just like long days because you're commissioning or there's some major problem? Curious.
my current job is a much healthier environment than my last job. And so
Mm-hmm.
I it's not common. It's usually if we have like a material excursion or something and you're like hard lined down until you figure out the problem. Um
Mm-hmm.
and then you end up doing the like, yeah, I came in on a Saturday and did 12 hours and I'm like tearing my hair out and I still can't sleep
Yeah.
tonight because my brain's still noodling on it. But I think that's just a
Yeah.
me problem. But like
Yeah. No, that's
it's
fair.
very few and far between here. It's not like once a month like it was in other places. It's more like
Yeah.
once every other quarter or something like that.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
um, and it's kind of funky. Like, I don't want to like trauma shame people, but I have perspectives from people who haven't done hardcore startup work. And they're like, well, they're asking too much of me. I was like, oh, did you do 9 hours today instead of 8? Like, did you eat lunch at your
Yeah.
desk? And like, I'm not trying to
Oh
talk
my
down to you,
God.
but I'm just like, I don't think you understand what it really means to be like in the trenches at times.
That is what, yeah, because my last startup was kind of cakewalk, and people would
Mhm,
talk
mhm.
like, oh my God, this is really tough. And I'm just like, because I came from a previous place where it was like I would work, until 8, try to get out of there, but then like go home and work until 12 or 1, and then maybe even go to bed and then get called because there was just so much work to do and I had 30
Yes.
people working for me, and like I
Yes.
mean it was just a lot. um
It's like I don't want to
yeah.
diminish your problems, but there are circles of hell. Like, I'm just gonna throw that out there. Like, this is hell
Yeah.
for you, but it's like I- I'm I'm doing okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I witnessed somebody who worked way too many hours because he was just a go-getter and it was commissioning time and the pressures were on, and
Hmm.
ended up having, an accident driving home, and, not just really not a good situation. And that actually made me realize that one of my guys was working crazy hours, but we had 4 different factories that we were working in and I was doing
Right.
my own stuff and I had no idea. And there's this whole thing about like making sure that everybody's looking out for everybody. You need to be like thinking about, is this person working too many hours? And maybe
Hmm.
I just need to call them an Uber or get them in a hotel. And we all just need to be looking out for ourselves because people like us, we're proud and we're not going to give up and we're so dedicated. But like, we need to really just look out for each other and make sure we're not putting each other ourselves at risk.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good point because e- especially when you work alongside such champion people and such hard considerate workers, you don't really want to leave them there. Like if they're eating a shit sandwich, you're like, okay, I'll take a slice. Like I'm not gonna leave a buddy
Right.
behind.
Right.
But sometimes when you have your community like all chipping in for not great or not safe situations, like, oh, we started this and we have to finish it eventually, no matter how long we go, then you edge into a less good territory. So you want to be supportive, but you don't want it to be enabling poor behavior. So
Exactly. No, this was such a great talk, Justine.
Agreed. So
all right, everyone, we will see you next time, and
yes.
Thank you for listening.
Yes, take care and see y'all soon.